hydroxychloroquine. It's now a bit more in doubt with some of the more solid stuff we've had recently, and it looks like it's going to be limited to randomized controlled clinical trials. Do you see the situation improving in terms of drug supply, or are your patients, does it look like they're going to be going to weird parts of town to find obscure pharmacies for a while now?
Some of it is getting a little bit better. Okay. But it really is a big burden, and we are all trying to look out for our patients. So it's one of the burdens that they didn't need. This side of it, we're seeing data. We just had the EULAR meeting as a virtual meeting and so on. Apparently 18,000 people attended virtually. We now have enough data to sort of say that no, our rheumatic disease patients don't seem to be that much more likely to get COVID and have a severe disease course. So that makes us feel quite a bit better. There's been this sort of degree of, well, what do you do with a clinical trial? And it's not necessarily for COVID. You know, it's probably for one of the rheumatic diseases. Maybe it's a JAK inhibitor, and they're all in development. And we want to make sure that patients stay in these trials. We don't want to suddenly withdraw them from an experimental therapy when they've done all this stuff to be able to enroll in the protocol. So that's been another issue. I think the knowledge about whether you use an unproven therapy or not, if it has some kind of influence on another disease state, is rather important. So as long as there's only randomized controlled trials for hydroxychloroquine, then they're probably not going to be of sufficient size to really influence the availability of the drug for our lupus patients who need it so much. I think that's just the important point. We have enough of the expensive biologics. We have enough IL-6 inhibitors, and we have enough IL-1 inhibitors. But that's kind of ironic, but true.
And so we end up seeing these kind of balkanizations, these walls between these specializations. What is this trial that's, has it been interrupted, or is it still ongoing?
Well, this one's not quite ready for trials yet. What they're trying to tell everybody is that it's very hard to find therapies for lupus. And you already know there's only one therapy that's been approved in the last 50 years, and I helped to work on that one. It's quite exciting. But why do all these lupus trials fail? Well, part of it, there's so many different reasons. It's outcome measures that don't work very well. It's a heterogeneous disease. It comes and goes, it flares, and then it remits. So it's different from most of our other diseases, which are progressive. And there's just so many different challenges, but the primary one is you have to give everybody active therapy because they're sick. So you don't really have placebo. You have what we call standard of care. And then what you're doing is you're adding the new therapy on top of standard of care versus no new therapy, which then becomes a placebo, but everybody's getting treated the best way we know how anyway. So obviously you're going to do well regardless. And then it's a matter of whether adding the new therapy can become statistically better. And that's a little bit of how all the COVID trials are doing too. And so that's where it gets to be harder to show benefit because everybody's getting everything we can do for them. And then adding the experimental therapy or the therapy in question. So, but what this company is trying to do is develop some new targets for treatment by using AI. So by using AI, they can actually investigate far more targets than, say, the traditional drug development way. And they can then investigate based on what they find in lupus models of disease. And we have several mouse models of lupus, which are pretty good at predicting how lupus will behave. But unfortunately, we've cured lots of mice and hardly any humans. So it's an imperfect model. But the idea is that if you can use AI to basically select the targets and then you can test it in murine models, you could do a lot more for a lot less money and maybe even in a shorter period of time. So it's an appealing idea.
And that has ramifications across the
COVID.
board.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, you know, this whole idea of what we're trying to do with these trials and why they're so important and why the FDA is so incredibly busy now, they can't see straight and they're not talking to sponsors about anything else that they want to talk about in their drug development programs, is because of all this, and trying to monitor these and trying to make sure that they're designed correctly and that the outcome measures are appropriate and all of that stuff is very much of the sort of the same story as with lupus.
Great. Well, thanks for your insights. I really appreciate that.